Stand up, put one foot behind the other leg, lift it off the floor and let go of whatever you're holding 10 seconds. That's the entire test. In a study of 1,702 people between the ages of 51 and 75, about 1 in 5 could not do it. Over the next 7 years, 17.5% of the people who failed had died, compared with 4.6% of the people who passed. Even after the researchers accounted for age, body weight, and existing disease, the risk of dying from any cause was still 84% higher in the group that couldn't hold the position. Nothing about standing on one leg has anything to do with the things that actually kill people. Cancer doesn't care about your ankles. A narrowed artery doesn't check your balance. And most of those deaths had nothing to do with falling, so this test shouldn't work. It costs nothing, needs no machine, draws no blood, and takes less time than reading this sentence. And it sees something that a full panel of expensive tests routinely misses. The question isn't whether you can stand on one leg, it's what your body has to spend to make it happen. Falls are the leading cause of injury-related death among American adults over 65. Not car crashes, not fires, falls. And the chain is easy to picture because most people over 50 have watched it happen to someone. Balance fails on a wet step. The hip breaks, surgery follows, then weeks of lying still, then a walker that was supposed to be temporary. A hip fracture after 65 is one of the sharpest turning points in medicine, and a large share of the people who survive one never walk independently again. So the obvious reading is that the 10-second test is a falling test, and that reading is real. Balance is trainable at any age in a way most people over 50 are never told. It improves within weeks of being practiced, and practicing it lowers the odds of the fall that starts the chain. If you take nothing else from the next several minutes, that alone is worth the time. But it doesn't explain the study, because the people in that group weren't mostly dying of fractures. They were dying of cancer, of heart disease, of respiratory illness, deaths that have nothing to do with a wet step. A tumor doesn't grow faster because someone wobbles. And yet the wobble saw it coming. Which means balance was never the thing being measured. Balance was just the thing that made it visible. There's a whole industry built on the obvious reading: wobble boards, balance cushions, 5-minute stability routines for seniors, and they work at the test. Practice standing on one leg for 3 weeks and you will pass the 10-second stance. That's the trap. You can train the score without touching whatever produced it. Which is why the interesting evidence doesn't come from the foot at all. In 2015, researchers reported on nearly 140,000 adults across 17 countries. The measurement was a hand squeeze on a spring-loaded grip meter. Median follow-up: 4 years. Every 5 kilograms of lost grip strength was associated with a 16% higher risk of death from any cause, a 17% higher risk of cardiovascular death, and a 17% higher risk of death from causes that had nothing to do with the heart. Grip strength predicted death more strongly than systolic blood pressure, the number every doctor's office in America measures at every visit. Now hold both findings at the same time: a foot on the floor and a hand around a metal handle. No shared muscle, no shared joint, no shared skill. Someone can have excellent grip and terrible balance, or the reverse. The two tests have almost nothing in common as movements, and they carry roughly the same weight in predicting who dies. Two measurements that share nothing can only agree if neither of them is measuring what it appears to measure. Something underneath is showing through both, and if it can surface in a hand and in a foot, It isn't local. It's a property of the whole system. So what does a hand have in common with an ankle? Sit down on the floor, then stand back up using as little support as you can. You start with 10 points and lose 1 for every part of your body you lean on. Researchers followed 4,282 adults aged 46 to 75 for a median of 12 years. Among those who scored a perfect 10, 3.7% died. Among those who scored 4 or below, 42.1% did. A fourth measurement needs nothing but a hallway. Across 9 pooled studies covering 34,485 adults over 65, every tenth of a meter per second of walking speed was associated with roughly 12% lower mortality. At 75, predicted 10-year survival ranged from 19 to 87% in men, depending largely on walking pace. A foot, a hand, a floor, a hallway, all pointing the same direction. What they share is this: each one loads several systems at once and demands they cooperate within milliseconds. Standing on one leg needs the inner ear vision, sensation in the sole of the foot, ankle muscles correcting hundreds of times a minute, and blood pressure holding steady against gravity. Rising from the floor needs strength relative to your body weight, joint range, and nerve timing. A weakness anywhere shows up as a lower score everywhere. That's why a hand and an ankle agree. And the wiring underneath them thins quietly. A motor unit is a single nerve cell plus every muscle fiber it commands. From roughly midlife onward, motor units are steadily lost and the surviving nerves adopt the orphaned fibers. The muscle stays, the control gets coarser, an orchestra that keeps every musician but loses half its conductors. You never feel a conductor leave. What you feel years later is that the movement costs more. By then, the evidence has usually been erased because life quietly reshapes itself around what's left, removing exactly the demands that would have revealed the loss. So we know these 4 tests read one shared system. We still don't know why losing it predicts a death from cancer. 2 men, both 68, climb the same stairs at the same speed and reach the top together. One used about 40% of what his body could produce, the other used 95. From behind, you couldn't tell them apart. Neither could they. That gap is what these tests measure, not strength, not balance. The distance between what your body can do and what your day actually asks of it. The margin. Ordinary days never test it because ordinary days are built to be survivable. Stairs, groceries, the walk to the car sit inside almost anyone's capacity, which is exactly why they reveal nothing. Each of these tests asks for slightly more than a normal day. They aren't hard, just harder than life, which is where the cancer deaths finally make sense. The margin is what you spend when something goes wrong. Pneumonia, surgery, chemotherapy. 2 people receive the same diagnosis and the same treatment, and one has reserve to spend on recovery. The other was already at 95%. The tests were never predicting the disease. They were predicting what you'd have left when one showed up, which reframes the 1 in 5 who couldn't hold 10 seconds. They weren't clumsy, and most had no symptoms. They were living at the edge of a margin their days never showed them. 3 things follow. Test the margin deliberately and watch the direction rather than the score. The same test, twice a year, tells you which way you're moving. These are population-level associations, not verdicts. A pass isn't protection, and a failure isn't a sentence. Ask your body for what life stopped asking, the floor instead of the chair. one leg while you brush your teeth, weight heavy enough that carrying it registers. Demand is the only signal this system answers to, and it still answers at 70, much as it does at 40, more slowly, but it answers. Then watch your substitutions, because that's where the loss hides. The handrail you didn't need last year, the hand on the knee that appeared without a decision, each one deletes a little of the evidence. If something has changed, take the observation to your doctor rather than the conclusion. Balance and strength also shift with inner ear problems, medication, and blood pressure. If you want to keep looking at what decides how much life fits inside a lifespan, stay with us. Because something has to be spending that margin, and the fastest spending doesn't happen in hospitals. It happens on ordinary days. Inside habits so comfortable nobody would call them dangerous. That's where we're going next.